I've gotten a lot of requests to bring in NXT to my universe mode, and I'm a big fan of, or at least I was a big fan of what NXT is producing in real life. So I think it surprises some people that I openly detest the idea of bringing in an NXT brand into my universe mode as strongly as I do. I have a few different reasons for doing this. First of all, I've mentioned it before, is the idea that I don't want to stretch myself too thin, especially now when I've got a second channel going now and I'm dropping main event because I want to try to focus more on that because universe mode does take a lot of time. And ultimately, I don't think that my future lies in this channel, at least in terms of where I can gain the most success. But even if that channel didn't exist, we would still only have the 3 brands, or not the 3 brands, but the 3 shows rather. So part of it is a time thing. I just don't have the time to make another show. Like I said, I'm dropping main event, so replacing that with an NXT would be counterproductive to the decision to drop main event. Time isn't the only reason why I'm not invested in a 3rd brand though, and why I have no interest in bringing in another show. And part of this ties back into why UCW 2K15 fell through. For those of you who are new, who don't know, I had planned on making a Created Wrestler Universe Mode way back in WWE 2K15. This was supposed to be a sequel to my UCW brand that I had in my WWE 13 Universe Mode. And ultimately that fell through for a number of reasons, some of them involving how bare bones WWE 2K15 was. The reason why I never decided to bring it back in, say, 2K16 or 2K17, the reason why I never brought it back in those games when we had more of an ability to customize the various facets of the game, the reason why I never brought it back is just because I simply don't have the time. And this was even before starting that other channel. It's just, universe mode is a big investment. Ever since I started changing up my production style, my WWE Universe Mode has taken more and more of my time and has been much more difficult to produce because I am spending much more time editing it. The matches, I think, have been getting better now that I've been controlling it, but I am a perfectionist. I try to get every detail correct, so it has been, beforehand, I could always just let the AI control the match and just throw it on in the background, record it, just kind of cut the clips together, and that was that. Nowadays, I'm going through and I'm trying to make sure that everything flows together nicely, and this increase in production value also means that I have to dedicate more time to it. So trying to run 2 universe modes at once just wasn't a feasible idea. The reason why I bring this up is because having NXT, which would be its own sort of entity, in essence it would almost be like having a second universe mode, because it is disconnected from my WWE Universe Mode. Yeah, the superstars are eventually going to be elevated to Raw and SmackDown, to the main show, so it's not completely its own thing, but the storylines involved in it would be solely contained within the NXT brand. Of course, I could always expand on this in the future when I elevate these superstars to the main roster, which I think is why somebody like Brennan Plays can use NXT, is because it gives him a way to bring in more superstars, and that way when these superstars get to the main roster, he does a good job at, capitalizing on the history of NXT, and that way you get a chance to get familiarized with these other superstars, which is a big plus with main roster NXT as well, is that you get an introduction to these guys, they get a chance to develop their skills, and all that good stuff. But there's a bit of an issue in a few of those points that I just brought up, why NXT works. The very reasons why NXT works in real life, why it could work for other universe modes, are essentially the reasons why it would not work in my series. First of all, the idea of introducing these superstars. Obviously, the main roster WWE in real life, this gives them a chance to help these superstars, people from the Performance Center, help them improve their abilities. I'm playing a game, so I don't really need that because they have whatever abilities I want them to have. So in terms of training people, that's not really necessary. In terms of introducing superstars before they get to the main roster, that's kind of pointless because I have always in the past, I've been debuting superstars to the main show, and like Cesaro, he was a superstar that I brought in late in the WWE 13 cycle. More recently, look at guys like Samoa Joe, Shinsuke Nakamura. I'm doing just fine debuting them on the main roster, and I feel like the extra introduction on NXT isn't really necessary. Then there's the idea of what Brennan Plays uses it for, which is a chance to expand his roster, to you know, bring in more custom superstars, more created wrestlers, and all that good stuff. Now, I've already expressed this disinterest in the past of using created wrestlers. The main reason why I use the superstars that I do, why I focus solely on the guys who are on the in-game roster, is because I know that they're going to be coming back, at least until, you know, someone gets fired or whatever. Like, for example, Simon Gotch was recently released by the WWE, so I'm going to have to start planning a way, you know, writing him out of the series, writing him off. But with created superstars, there's no guarantee that they're going to be in the next year's game. Like if I wanted to bring in someone who just debuted in NXT, like Ruby Riott, you know, what are the odds that she'll be in the next game? I think they're pretty slim. So trying then to update the created wrestlers, switching between games, the visuals would look inconsistent. Each created wrestler would look slightly different. And that's why, you know, this happened with superstars I use now, like Cody Rhodes and CM Punk. I brought in 2 created wrestlers for them, and then I had to switch them up for WrestleMania to ones that looked better. So obviously I'm gonna use those models for the rest of the cycle, but I don't like the idea of those visual inconsistencies, especially when it's switching between games. I feel as though there can be, especially when you're first starting out in, like if I was starting out in October or November, right after the game is released. The created wrestler, like the selection on Community Creations, would be pretty slim pickings, and the quality wouldn't be that great because it takes time to make the really exceptional created wrestlers. It takes time to put that all together. So some of the created wrestlers just look really bad, and I like to have my universe mode looking as good as it can. People ask me why I don't ever use custom arenas, at least for like Raw and SmackDown. And I don't do that because the load times I don't think are worth it, and the main arenas look just fine. I really don't see how, yeah, I could see how it can add like a visual flair to the production, like what Murph's has. His arenas look distinct because, you know, obviously he made them himself. But I use the in-game arenas because I don't think that's something that I need to worry about. I'm not as concerned with that aspect of the visual presentation. I'm more concerned about producing storylines, getting people invested in characters, putting on good matches. I'm less concerned with creating an arena, creating attires, that sort of thing. Now I'll make my own attires for pay-per-views and other certain special events because I feel as though that's something that I have done before. It's something that I think I'm not terrible at, whereas creating an arena would be, I mean, not to say that creating attires isn't time-consuming, it isn't an investment in its own right, but the arena aspect of it, when I'm already doing that type of thing for attires, I personally just don't want to put the extra time into making my own arena. And I could download one off Community Creations, you might say, but again, the load times, I just want to have fun making this universe mode while also making something that I think is of high quality, and sitting through all the extra load times and just having that would only take more time to make these universe mode videos, and I feel as though I'm already putting enough time into them, just trying to improve my editing abilities. I think I have other things that I could focus on that are more important than the look of the arena, because obviously people still watch my videos, they don't really care about what arena these people are competing in. So I personally don't think the custom arenas are necessary. But not only would the created wrestlers be visually inconsistent, just the idea of expanding my roster any larger than it already is not exactly something that I'm interested in either. I try to make the shows the best that they can be. I try to pack as much content as I can into the episodes that I produce now. So expanding my roster even further, like I said earlier about dividing up my attention, dividing up my creativity, that's going to be a bit more exhausting for me mentally to try to plan out extra storylines for NXT alongside of what I'm already doing for Raw and SmackDown. If I bring in another roster of, say, 20 or 30 superstars, not only do I have to plan out all the storylines for them, I have to figure out how do I want to use all of these characters, how am I going to transition them to the main roster. Personally, for me, it's easier to just introduce superstars into the main roster when I feel it's necessary. When the new games come out and I see exactly who's going to be on the roster, I have time to figure out where are these superstars going to fit into my series, as well as, you know, phasing out all of the superstars from the previous game, getting them out of the mix. So when I'm bringing in all these other superstars, I need to figure out when is each guy debuting. Whereas with NXT, yeah, it does just sort of add like an extra layer to the to that aspect, I'd still be doing the same things. But personally, NXT has certain purposes that it needs to fulfill for it to be necessary, and for my universe mode, I don't think that any of its current purposes are necessary for me. If anything, making NXT would only detract from my other episodes because I would be having to dump all of this extra time into NXT and making that show on top of already making Raw and SmackDown, which I feel as though if I'm putting all of this time into NXT, that is time and energy wasted that I could be using to make Raw and SmackDown even better than they are now. I'm going to be dropping main event here shortly, and while part of that is so that I can focus more on my anime channel to try to keep that going, because ever since I started up Universe Mode again, production on that channel has dropped significantly, so I'd like to get that channel back up and running. But also, this will give me a chance to make Raw and SmackDown better shows. I'm hoping to... I mean, already, it's not even that I need to expand their length, or... It's not even that I need to expand their runtimes, because already I've been making, pretty consistently making 35 plus, 40-minute even, of Raw and SmackDown episodes beforehand. So it's just a matter of maybe I'll add in an extra segment or two, just so that way I can keep the superstars who were getting exposure on main event, they can instead get that exposure on Raw or SmackDown, and that'll add a bit more depth to the Raw and SmackDown shows. At this point in my life, after just dropping out of college because I wanted to pursue YouTube full-time, I'm doing a lot of processing in figuring out what kind of a schedule I'm going to be working with moving forward, which is why I decided to drop main event, because I just need that extra time until I can figure out what can I do, what can't I do. If I was to include NXT into Universe Mode right now, not only would it be counterproductive to what I want to do in Universe Mode itself, but it would also be counterproductive to what I want to do on YouTube as a whole. Apologies if this video was a bit all over the place. We, I guess, are continuing with Simple Saturdays. Next week is going to be Extreme Rules, so I don't think we're going to be getting another Simple Saturdays, although I do have another video recorded which is very much like a Simple Saturdays, although it's possible that I already uploaded that video or it might be coming out just shortly before or shortly after Extreme Rules. I'm not entirely sure, but you'll see it when it comes around, and you should know the video when you see it, although I've been thinking it might be a Behind the Universe episode, but I don't think it's going to be, so it's just going to be its own little thing. So stick around for that if you're looking forward to that. Stick around for Extreme Rules, and just stick around for anything MathWiz97 on this channel. Thank you for joining me once again, for putting up with my ramblings in yet another unscripted answering a question type video. Hopefully this was helpful, hopefully this was useful to some of you. At the very least, hopefully it was entertaining. If you want to hear more of the sound of my lovely voice, then be sure to head over to Second Look's channel, because I recently did a podcast with him about Pokemon. So if you're interested in that, interested in learning more about me, you can head over. There's going to be a video in an end card annotation thingamajig. And until next time, keep on YouTubing.